Hey everyone, and now we're going to be looking through the plantar foot muscles and nerves. And so the very first thing we're going to do here is define our orientations. So we're looking at the plantar, or the bottom side of our foot right here. We're looking at the most superficial layer currently. And so if we're looking up, this is going to be equivalent to being anterior. If we're looking down, that's going to be equivalent to looking posterior or behind the body. If we're looking to the left, we see that's where our big toe is. We know that has to be the medial side. And then if we're looking to the right, our pinky toe side, that's going to be lateral. So these are the key orientations that we're going to be keeping throughout this talk. Now, we're at the most superficial level. The very first muscle that we're going to see on the most medial side here is going to be the following. It's going to be called Abductor Hallucis, and that's it. And then what you're going to do is you're going to move lateral to that. We're going to see this muscle right here. This guy's name is going to be Flexor Hallicus Brevis, FHB. And then the most lateral muscle that we see here is going to be called your abductor digiti minimi. And the reason why it's called that is because it's abducting, it's pulling the little toe away from the rest of the body. Same can be said of Abductor Hallucis. Halicus is referring to the great toe. So that's the most superficial layer that we're looking at. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to go a little bit deeper. I'm going to take away those muscles. And so now what we're looking at is the following. So on the most medial side of our foot here, what we are seeing is this guy. This guy is called Flexor Halicus Brevis. You can see it's kind of got like these two heads, and then protruding through that, I want to make note here that you are seeing the Flexor Halicus longus tendon. So I use a little t to denote tendon. And so both these jobs are going to have the purpose, or both these muscles have the purpose of flexing this big toe, so pulling your toe down towards that plantar side of your foot. Moving on from that, another key muscle we're going to note that is deep to those other muscles we were just talking about. Underneath the flexor digitorum brevis, we're going to find the quadratus plantae muscle, so QP. And then also on the most lateral side here, we are going to see the muscle that is called flexor digiti minimi. So that's one muscle. Now, I also want to make note here, it needs a different color, that we have different lumbrical muscles that are kind of running between the tendons of your flexor digitorum longus muscle here, or the tendon. So this right here, just for sake of clarity, was flexor digitorum longus tendon. And so in between these tendons, we've got these guys right here, 1, 2, 3, 4. So these guys, we collectively are going to call them the lumbrical muscles, LMM. Lumbrical literally just means little worm in Latin. And so these are the muscles that you should be taking away from this layer of the plantar foot. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go even deeper, and we're going to get to the deepest layer of our foot that we can get to. And so what we see here is the following. So the muscles that you see here are the same muscle, but there's two heads of it. And if you think about what they're going to do if they fire, if they contract, they're going to have the job of adducting the great toe. And so by this process, hopefully the name will make sense. So we're going to know that this guy has an oblique head. Oblique literally just means slanty in Latin. So this is the oblique head of the Abductor Hallucis, and that's the muscle name. This guy right here is going to have a more transverse orientation, so we call this the transverse head of the Abductor Hallucis muscle. So think about what happens. They also make a number 7. We're looking at the wrong foot, but it does make a number 7 if you're looking at the other side of the body here, if we did a mirror image of this. And then finally, another note I'm going to make here is that you see this tendon coming in right here. This tendon is the Tibialis posterior tendon. So that guy's coming in here, and it is attaching onto one of those cuneiform muscles, bones, sorry. And also from this view, what you see are your Interossei. So these would be called your plantar interossei muscles. And so these things are going to have the job of adducting the toes, pulling those toes back together, because we remember that mnemonic pad and dab. So P, plantar interosseus, I'm sorry about that. Plantar interosseus has the job of adducting those toes, pulling those toes back together. The dorsal interossei muscles between those bones on the dorsal side of the foot are going to have the job of abducting the toes. And then while we're at it, just for sake of having some landmarks here, we can see we've got our calcaneus bone right there. And yeah, so these are the key things to look at. Now I'm going to talk about innervations, but before I do, I just kind of want to summarize everything that we've been talking about so that we can hopefully see some of the patterns that are happening here. So again, following the orientation that I've defined, what I want to highlight is the fact that our most superficial layer, we had Abductor Hallucis, then we had Flexor digitorum brevis, then we had Abductor digiti minimi, and then deep to that, we had the following with Flexor Halicus brevis, and then lateral to that, we had the quadratus plantae muscle, and then finally we had the Flexor digitorum minimi muscle. And then on the next layer that we talked about, we also had those lumbrical muscles, so I'll just call them LMM. And then on the deepest layer that we've talked about, we had the oblique head of the adductor hallucis muscle. We also had the transverse head of the adductor hallucis muscle. And we also had those interossei muscles, specifically the plantar interossei muscles here. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use different colors. We're going to light this up like a Christmas tree. I'm going to see where or who is getting innervated by what. So I'm going to use a red star here, and I'm going to put a star behind Abductor digiti minimi, another star behind Flexor digitorum, Flexor digiti minimi, sorry, and then your lumbricals. I'm going to give 3 stars to this guy, and I'm going to also be giving a star to transverse head and oblique head of adductor hallucis, and another star to this. So star means that you are innervated by the lateral plantar nerve, because it's on the lateral side of the foot. So hopefully we see this pattern. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in with a green star here, and I'm going to say that, sorry, I'm going to zoom out a little. I've got a green star right here, green star right here, right there, and these guys are going to be innervated by your medial plantar nerve. So hopefully this is making sense. So I'm going to wrap things up with that. These are the key nerves to take away, as well as the muscles as we work through the different layers of our plantar foot. I hope this is helpful, and I'll leave it to you guys to figure out which one of these, red or green, goes to quadratus plantae. So thank you all for watching. Hope everyone out there is doing well. Talk to you guys next time.